Welcome class, myself Professor D.S. Rai, Professor Department of Civil Engineering, BVD IITM Lucknow. The course today we will take up KCE 076 Urban Transportation Planning, in which the today lecture is 31, in which we will discuss stages and study areas of urban transportation planning process. References that I have taken are Chakravarti Partho and Das Animes, Principle of Transportation Engineering, Pepe Costa and Prevendas, Transportation Engineering and Planning, Kadiali and Lal, Principle and Practices of Highway Engineering, R. Srinivas Kumar, Introduction to Traffic Engineering, S.K. Khanna and Gesto, Highway Engineering. Some material have been taken from NAPTEL and internet. The contents today we will discuss transportation planning, planning process, transportation stages, survey and data collection, transportation model, trip generation, trip distribution, model split, traffic assignment, future land use and travel demand forecasting, evaluation, transport policy, study area, study boundary and cordon line. First, we are taking transportation planning. The study of development and planning is basically a study of interaction between the man, land and the activities, the form of a spatial organization of economic. After the industrial revolution and rapid growth of urbanization, the development in the field of transport is enormous in both infrastructure, speed as well as the transport technology. Nowadays, every country of the world is having its own national transport system, not in isolation, but as a part of international system of transportation. Transport has become integral and essential part of the economy and require a planned growth which should be sustainable. In fact, transport planning is the process of regulating and controlling the provision of transport to facilitate the efficient operation of the economy, social and political life of the country at the lowest social cost. Now, planning process, primarily aim of transport planning is the identification and evaluation of the future transport growth. In this diagram we can see here, this is transport planning process, in which we can see here, this is the transportation survey and the data analysis. Both will give the transportation model, and on the basis of transportation model, along with the future land use forecast and alternative policy strategy, then we go for the policy evaluation. Now, come to the transportation stages. There are mainly 4 stages. The first, transportation survey, data collection and analysis. The second is use of transportation model. Third, future land use forecast and alternative policy strategy, and the fourth, policy evaluation. So, these are the 4 main stages of transportation planning process. So, we will take up one by one the survey and data collection. The entire planning process of the transportation may be local, regional or national is based on the survey and the data collection. This includes all type of literature and data, both of the government or the non-government, available on the transportation journey, behavior pattern, nature and intensity of traffic, freight structure, cost and benefit, and that include that is income, employment and estimates. The comprehensive knowledge of the traffic flow and the pattern within a defined area is essential. The survey and data collection, in addition to the traffic data, planner also require land use and the population data for their study area. In this connection, West Midland Transportation Study in 1968 provide a format which is useful for the transport survey and the data collection. The survey should be well defined and be divided in zones. Origin and destination of the trip can be geographically monitored. The data collection regarding existing travel pattern is time consuming as well as costly affair. It involves both roadside interview and home interview. The variables for the both type of interviews includes, this is the standard data collection, survey and the data collection. We can see here, this is the home interview trip data. What are the data collected are the day and date of journey, origin, address and time, destination address and time, journey purpose, mode of travel, ticket and parking cost. So, this is the home interview trip data. Now, household data, number of person, their age, sex, composition and the family relationship. Economic activity status of the person and their occupation, vehicle ownership, tenure and the properties type, household income. The third one is rescheduled interview, day and date of journey, current crossing point, vehicle type and occupancy, origin and destination of the survey, origin starting time, goods carried and their weight, commercial vehicle. So, these are the data collected from both type of interview. The detail of existing transport network are an important source of information. In some cases, a very detailed description of links and notes in terms of vehicle speed, carriageway width and a nodal point is collected. The travel time and the network characteristic of the public transport network are simultaneously collected. The second stage of transportation planning process is to use this collected data to build up a transportation model. This model is the key to the predicting future travel demand and network needs and is derived in 4 recognized stages. Number 1, trip generation, 2, trip distribution, 3rd, modal speed and 4th, traffic assignment. So, these are the stages for the transportation model. So, we can see here these 4 data required for the transportation model are based on the land use data, travel generation factors, friction or of distance factor, calibration factor, and transportation network. Depending on the feedback, this is the sequential demand: trip generation, then go for the trip distribution, then go for the model split, and finally traffic assignment. Trip generation. The first stage of model building process is that of trip generation. Trips are made of variety of purpose and the various land use. For convenience, trips are often split into two groups. The first is home based trip. In such trips, one trip ends at the home of the person making the trip, which may be either origin or destination. In any case, that will be the means one end should be home based. The second is non home based trip, in which neither end is home based. So, the initial part of the transport model expresses a trip making relationship with the mathematical form. So, the ultimately we can calculate the total number of trip ends originating from the defined survey zones. So, trip generations are of two types. First is a multiple regression technique are often used to calibrate a trip generation model incorporating the above household variables. This model takes the following general form. This is the general form, that is y is equal to a plus b 1 x 1 plus b 2 x 2 plus and so on b n x n, where y the number of trips by mode or purpose generated in a given zone. A is the constant form, b 1, b 2 and so on b n regression coefficient relating to the independent variables, and that is household income, car ownership, household structure, etc. Consequently, a more recent approach to trip generation has been to use a technique known as category analysis, because if we go for all vehicles, all income groups, etc., and so this will be very costly and very time taking. So, the another category we can say for the trip generation is category analysis. This trip generation stage of planning process estimate the total number of trips originating in the survey area at one or more future dates. Now, come to the trip distribution. This is the next stage in the transportation model. It involves on the analysis of trip between the zones. Length states the function of this stage of the model. It is the function of trip distribution to calculate the number of trips between one zone to another given the previously determined number of trip ends in the each zone together with the further information transport facility available between the zones. Now, come to the model split. This term is used by the transport plan to describe the phase where the choice of travel mode is incorporated into the model. The positioning of this stage is neither fixed nor singularly definable, since element of model splits are the part of the other stages. Its position within the transportation model differs between the studies. It is either used as a trip generation stage by the stratifying the total trip or at the assignment stage of the model. This the main purpose of the model stage is to determine the trip share of the public as against private transport. Now, come to the traffic assignment. The fourth stage of modeling process is that of the traffic assignment. Its aim being to simulate route choice through a defined transport network. Traffic assignment may be considered in two parts. The first, it is necessary to define the transport network and determine the criteria for route choice through the network. The second, using the interzonal trip matrix as a input data, trips are assigned to this network. When future trip levels are assigned, it is possible to assess deficiency in the existing transport network and also determine a list of construction priorities. Network descriptions refer to the process where the highway network is broken down into the link and the nodes. For each link, data is required on its length, road type, vehicle travel time and traffic capacity. When coding the road network, links are usually identified by the node number at each of its end. In addition to such route interaction node, zone centroid nodes are also defined. In the assignment process, all traffic originating in a particular traffic zone is assumed to be loaded onto the network at this later type of nodes. Now, come to the future land use and travel demand forecasting. So, we can see here the forecasting of the future land use input is a precocious task for two important reasons. First, the transport planner have to rely on the judgment of the type of the planner for the most of their land use forecast. Then this information is vitally important since it has a profound effect on the travel forecast. Secondly, long term forecasting is beset with the many statistical problems, since transportation planners are usually working at least 10 and sometimes 25 years ahead. Their estimates are inevitably open to much criticism. Nevertheless, estimates of the future travel demands have to be made using the best method which is available. Some of these forecast problems are amplified below in the listing of the mainland use input necessary for the travel forecast to be made. Most important variables used in transport plannings. Number one is a population. This includes size, age, structure and distribution. Employment, as the journey to work is the greatest travel demand. Third is the personal income and expenditure. Then the above group of variables have a compound influence upon the overall level of demand for travel at some future date. Further, complication arise when their impact upon the spatial pattern of the demand is assessed. So, forecast of population and economic variables are an important input into the use of transportation model for forecasting the future travel demands. Then come to the evaluation. this is the final stage of the transportation planning process is of evaluating the alternative policies which have been suggested. The evaluation stage is probably the most important of all, yet have received only a limited research attention. An economic evaluation of the transport proposal is necessary because vehicle kilometer and the road space are commodities which are not directly bought and sold. The technique of cost benefit analysis is consequently evolved and investment criticism in the private sector. As such, it provides an economic evaluation on the cost side of the calculation. Estimates are made for the capital outlay, land purchase and maintenance. Now, come to the transportation policies. Now, it is every country is particular regarding the planned development of the transport system. Thus, they formulate their own transport policy which depends upon their needs and resources. The nature of transport policies varies with the time and space. In formulating the transport policy, one should take into consideration the coordination and competition. The coordination involves the relationship between the two or more different modes of transport like road and railways. One of the other hand, competition has occurred as the consequences of the public or private sector interaction. The transport policy also differs with the policy of government, and that is socialistic and democratic, etc. In spite of variation in the policy which are a natural and are a certain points which are useful if the incorporated in the transport policies. The points are from the transport policy of the country like USA, UK, Netherlands and European Unions, and they are follow. Now, come to the next one, study area. Definition of a study area. Transporters planning can be at the national level, regional level or the urban level. For the planning at the urban level, the study area should embrace the full conurbation containing the existing and the potential continuously built up area of the city. The imaginary line representing the boundary of the study area in term of the external cordon. The area inside the external cordonal line determines the travel pattern to a large extent, and as such is a survey is a great detailed. The selection of the external cordon line for the urban transportation study should be done carefully due to following factors. The first factors are is the external cordon line should circumscribe all area which are already built up and those areas which are considered likely to be developed during the period of study. Second, the external cordon line should be compatible with the previous study and the area of a study planned for the future. The external cordon line should be continuous and uniform in its course, so that movement crosses its once the line should be intersect road where it is safe and convenient to carry out the traffic survey. The area, a study area has been defined as the area within which a trip pattern will be significantly affected by the implementation of any resulting transport proposal. The study area must then be divided into analysis unit or zones. This will enable the planner to link the information about activities, travel and transportation. The study boundary before forecasting the travel for an urban area or the region, the planner must clearly define the exact area to be considered. These areas may be defined by the urban growth boundary, country line and the town centers. Now, a study boundary before forecasting the travel for the urban area or the region, the planner must clearly define the exact area to be considered. These areas may be defined by the urban growth boundary, country lines and the town centers. The planning area generally includes all type of development land plus undeveloped land that the area will encompass in next 20-30 years. Cordon line, this cordon line denotes the boundary of the planning area. In addition to the considering the future growth, the establishment of the cordon line might take into account political justification, census area boundary and the natural boundary. This cordon line should be intersect a minimum number of the road. Once the nature of a study is identified, the study area can be defined to encompass the area expected a policy impact. This area need not to be conformed by the political boundary, but bounded by the area influenced by the transportation system. The boundary of the area is defined by what is called external cordon or a simply cordon line. A sample of the zoning of a study are shown in the figure like this. This is the area, this is the thick line is the cordon line, this is the boundary, you can say boundary of the area to be surveyed, and these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 these are the zones, and the thinner lines are the network in the area to be surveyed. So, thank you very much. Thank you.